my beloved child. Today I am not calling you with noise, but with a deep vibration, like when a still lake suddenly sends out a circle from its center. I call you by your true name, not to frighten you, nor to force you to prove anything, but to touch the place within you that has grown weary from holding itself together for so long. There have been days when you have moved through life like someone walking down a long corridor, lights still on, yet inside you something quietly dimming. You still smile, still work, still respond, but within you there is a very hidden place you rarely dare to open, because you fear that if you do, everything will rush out like water breaking through a dam. I know, I see, and I do not come to condemn you for that fragility. I come as a gentle reminder that you are still in my hands, that you have never slipped beyond heaven's gaze. You think you have wandered far, but you do not realize that sometimes a single turn of the head is enough to see the door of grace already standing open. You have whispered in your heart, if only there were a sign, and today that sign is not thunder, not a loud event, but a call that is soft and sharp at once, cutting through all distraction, through tangled thoughts, through the dust of weariness, to touch the purest place within you. I am speaking to you in this very moment, and it is my presence that makes your heart change its rhythm. Do not call that unrest. It is your soul recognizing me, the way a child recognizes the voice of a father in a crowd. You have lived these past days layered over with many things: responsibility, expectation, endurance, silence. There are things you have not spoken of, not because you are proud, but because you fear troubling others, being misunderstood, being seen as weak, being labeled. But I do not look at you through labels. I look at you through truth. I see how you have tried to keep yourself upright while inside you trembled like a leaf in the wind. I see the nights when you lie down and your mind keeps running, calculating everything, remembering everything, worrying for everyone, until finally you ask, "And who is caring for me?" I hear the sighs you hide under the blanket, the why you dare not speak aloud. And I tell you this, you were not abandoned in those hours. The silence you have endured is not a sign that I have left. Often it is how I protect you from noises that would break what faith still remains. You thought I was absent, but in truth I was standing at the very edge of collapse, holding you when you no longer had the strength to hold yourself, like a shepherd guarding the flock through the night. I do not doze. I do not lose focus. I do not forget the name of a single one. And if you ask why I am calling you so urgently today, my answer is this: because a turning is opening before you. This is not merely a small decision, but a direction that will shape the next season of your life. I do not want you to enter it in confusion, nor to be carried by the inertia of old patterns. I want you to step into it with awareness, with trust, with a heart that has been awakened again. Some believe faith is a pleasant feeling, but, my child, faith often begins with a moment when you choose to stay. Staying is not about trying to please me. Staying is about placing your heart back where it belongs. Like a compass that has drifted, now being realigned to true north. I do not require you to be whole before you come. I call you to come so that I may do the work of restoration. You have heard many voices out there, voices of pressure, comparison, voices that make you doubt your worth. At times you have let those words become a wall, each brick a disappointment, a misunderstanding, a rejection, a prayer that seemed unanswered. You looked at that wall and thought, surely God is far. But I tell you the truth, it is that wall that has muffled my voice to you, not my silence. And now I am knocking on that wall not with the hammer of judgment, but with mercy. I knock so you will know that I am still here, that I am still patiently waiting for you to open the door. There are doors that do not open with the key of reason. They open with gentle surrender, Lord. I am here. When you say this, even silently, the wall begins to crack. Light begins to enter. And you will be surprised to see that what you thought had died within you, the first flame was only sleeping beneath the ashes, waiting for a breath from heaven to blaze again. Remember this, I never call you to panic. I call you to rescue you from drifting. There is a very subtle drifting, not an immediate departure, but a slow loss of sensitivity. You still do the right things, but your heart no longer feels near. You still pray, but the prayers seem to hit the ceiling and fall back. You still read, still listen, but your mind wanders elsewhere. This is what the enemy aims for, not to make you hate me, but to numb you to me, not to drive you into great sin at once, but to make you comfortable with delay, not to make you deny the light, but to keep you so busy that you no longer have time to look up. And when you grow numb, you begin to tell yourself, it's fine, tomorrow. But, my child, some tomorrows stretch into a dry season. I do not accuse you for being tired. I simply remind you that you no longer have to walk alone. I speak not to condemn the past, but to stop you before you go deeper into the shadowed territory of doubt. You are not a hopeless one. You are a called one. And those who are called will always be pulled, because the light within them disturbs the darkness. That is why I am not surprised by the many quiet battles you have endured. I only want you to stop thinking you are weak because you were attacked. You were attacked because you carry something worth protecting. When I say, do not scroll past, I do not speak like a merchant grabbing your sleeve. I speak as one who knows you are standing near something holy. There are moments in life when heaven places a door before you. That door is not always framed in radiant gold. Often it comes as a simple reminder, a line of words that touches the exact wound, a second when you stop instead of rushing, a moment when you breathe deeply and say, I still want to believe. Today is such a moment. You think you are only listening, but in truth, you are standing on the threshold of returning. Returning is not moving backward. Returning is coming back to the center, the place you were created to live from. Jesus never forced anyone, this is true. But true love always carries the weight of sincerity. True love is not cold, it calls. It seeks. It waits. It pleads when it knows the one it loves is standing near the edge. You do not need to fear his pleading. He does not plead to possess, he pleads to save. And when you stay simply by not turning away, you are performing an act that heaven calls faith. You place your heart before the truth that there is one who is speaking to you. My beloved child, the presence of Michael in the image you sense is not meant for display, but to remind you that the battle you have been walking through is not merely psychological or emotional. There are conflicts that unfold in the unseen realm, where negative thoughts do not always originate from you. You have blamed yourself before. Why do I think this way? Why am I so weak? Yet many times, those thoughts were arrows released at the very moment you were most exhausted. And the more you blamed yourself, the deeper the arrows went. Today, I do not want you to blame yourself anymore. I want you to recognize that you are protected, just as Daniel prayed. And the answer did not arrive immediately, because there was spiritual resistance along the way. Yet in the end, the messenger came at the appointed time, confirming that the prayer had been heard from the very first day. Do you see, delay is not always denial. There are matters that must be resolved in the invisible realm before they appear in visible life. This does not make me less powerful. It simply reveals that the battle is real. But you must also know this: if there is a battle, then there is also a victory prepared for you. I do not call you only to leave you stranded in the middle of the battlefield. I call you to draw you out of the range of voices that seek to fracture your faith. So stay with me. Let your mind slow down. Let your heart release its grip on control. Look at me as the one standing before you with gentle eyes, without accusation, without coldness, without distance. I am not surprised by your fractures. I know you carry them, and I still choose you. I do not love you because you are strong. I love you, and that love is what gradually makes you strong. If today you sense that something is shifting in the spiritual realm, you are not mistaken. When someone is about to step into a new season, the enemy often does everything possible to make them give up right at the threshold. But I tell you, do not give up at the door. Do not turn away just before the light. Do not scroll past just before truth reaches the deepest place. You have walked through enough to know that running does not heal. Only remaining in my presence restores your heart. Child, I invite you to do something very simple, yet powerful. Say just one sentence: Lord, I am here. You do not need eloquence. You do not need promises. You only need honesty. And when you are honest, heaven opens. When you are honest, layers of numbness begin to fall away. When you are honest, the first flame is breathed back to life. I am beginning that work right here, at this very moment, drawing you back into the closeness you have longed for. Not a closeness based on fluctuating emotions, but a closeness grounded in covenant. I am yours, and you are mine. I have never withdrawn that promise. I have never released my hand from your life. And if you feel within your chest a gentle pull, like a call, like warmth, like a peace without clear reason, know this: it is a tender confirmation that I am very near. You are not imagining it. You are being touched, my beloved child. Now that you have stayed a little longer, I want to lead you deeper into a place you once avoided, not because it is dark, but because it is real. There are truths within your heart that you learned to cover with busyness, with logic, with the well-practiced words, "I'm fine." But truth does not disappear simply because you refuse to look at it. It remains there, waiting to be touched by light. And light never harms what it illuminates. It exposes only to heal. I am not bringing you here to reopen wounds, but to uproot what has quietly drained your strength over time. You have wondered why you grow tired more easily now, why discouragement comes quicker, why patience with yourself feels thinner. You thought it was age, circumstances, pressure. Those play a part, but they are not the root. The root is that you have been carrying too much alone. You became a refuge for others and forgot that you, too, need somewhere to rest. You grew accustomed to being strong until you no longer knew how to ask for help. And when you did not ask, you began to blame yourself for not having enough strength. That cycle quietly wore you down. I see you trying to pray, yet prayer sometimes feels like a list of obligations rather than an encounter. I see you read and listen, yet inside you remains a question unanswered. Why do I still feel far? I am not offended by that question. On the contrary, I rejoice that you still ask for only those who still hope to ask questions. The distance you feel is not a geographical gap between heaven and you. It is a distance created by layers of defense you built to avoid being hurt again. You once believed deeply, loved sincerely, offered yourself fully. And then there were prayers that seemed right but were not answered as you hoped. relationships that broke despite your effort, doors you knocked on that never opened. Each time, you did not rebel or walk away, you simply stepped back a little, then another step, until one day you were standing far enough away that even you did not realize how long you had been retreating. You did not abandon me. You were protecting yourself from disappointment. But, my child, what you called protection slowly became a wall. And that wall did not only block pain, it also blocked joy, peace, and my gentle voice. I do not blame you for building that wall. I understand why you needed it for a season, but every wall has its time. Some things help you survive, but if you hold on to them too long, they prevent you from truly living. Today, when I call you to stay, I am not asking you to tear everything down at once. I am simply inviting you to place your hand on that wall and feel how tired it has made you. You have stood guard over your own heart, wary of every new hope, every new promise. You fear that if you open again, you will be disappointed again. But, my child, staying closed is also a form of disappointment, just a quieter one. I have not come to promise that you will never hurt again. I have come to tell you that you will not have to hurt alone anymore. There is a vast difference between the two. In the scriptures, there is a woman who had been bleeding for 12 years. She sought every remedy, consulted every healer, spent all she had, yet nothing improved. Her pain was not only physical, it was the pain of exclusion, of not being touched, not being allowed near. Then one day, with no strength left to push through crowds and no grand hope remaining, she thought only this: if I can just touch the edge of his garment. Her faith was not loud, not perfect, not theologically complete. It was simply the small act of someone exhausted yet unwilling to let go. And in that moment, life touched her. I tell you this not so you will compare yourself to anyone, but so you will know that sometimes faith is not a bold stride forward. It is simply not turning away when you have every reason to do so. You are doing that right now. You are not turning away. You are reaching for the hem of my presence, even as your hands tremble. My beloved child, the voices that cause you to doubt yourself are not all voices of truth. Some thoughts come to you so naturally, so familiarly, that you assume they are your own voice. Maybe I'm not enough. Perhaps God is tired of me. I must have missed my moment. Good things are probably meant for others. These phrases repeat themselves so often that they begin to sound like the truth. But, my child, truth does not repeat itself in order to persuade. Truth stands firm without needing to shout. Those other voices must repeat because they are weak. And it is precisely here that my protection is revealed. I do not leave you alone in the midst of those streams of thought. As Michael stands in the midst of battle, not to frighten you, but to remind you that not every thought in your mind has the right to remain, so I remind you that some thoughts must be recognized and released. You do not need to fight them with your own strength. You only need to bring them into the light. The light does the rest. Let me say this very clearly: you are not late. You are not excluded. You have not been overlooked. My timing is not like yours. There are seasons when I hold you back, not because I desire to delay blessing, but because if you were to receive it too soon, it would break you. You once asked to move faster, to rise higher, to have more. But I saw the places in you that needed strengthening first. I saw the wounds that, if left unhealed, would cause you to misunderstand what I give. The silence you experienced was not forgetfulness. It was a layer of safety. Just as Joseph was placed in prison not because his dream was wrong, but because a true dream requires a back strong enough to carry it. You do not know how many times I shielded you from things that looked like opportunities but were, in truth, traps. And today, as you stand here, I want you to know that those years were not wasted. They built within you a foundation you could not yet see. When I say this moment matters, I do not say it to pressure you. I say it because this is the moment you begin to release defenses that are no longer necessary. This is when you allow me into rooms you have kept tightly locked for so long, not to inspect, but to clear out. You have been holding on to many things that no longer serve life within you: old beliefs, self-judgments, promises others did not keep, but that you kept on their behalf. All of these weigh down your heart. And when the heart is heavy, closeness becomes difficult to feel. I am here to lighten you. But I do not do this while you run. I do it when you stay. You have stayed this far. That is no small thing. So I am not asking you to change everything at once. I am simply inviting you to acknowledge one thing: you need me. Not because you are deficient, but because you were created to live in connection. When you acknowledge this, nothing in you loses its value. On the contrary, you return to your rightful place. Let the tears, if there are any, fall. Let the unanswered questions rest for a while. You do not need to resolve everything today. You only need to open the door. The rest I will do, little by little, at the right time. And when you feel a peace that is very light, very real, not because every problem has been solved, but because you are no longer alone, know this: it is the sign that the wall has begun to lower. My beloved child, now that you have reached this point, I want you to slow down one more beat, not to prolong emotion, but so you can recognize what is truly happening within you. Some decisions are not made with loud words, but in a deep silence where you stop resisting. Your decision at this moment is not a dramatic commitment, nor a promise to do something great immediately. It is far simpler and far more powerful than you realize. You choose openness instead of closure, listening instead of scrolling past, staying instead of turning away. I want you to understand that this quiet choice is already changing the inner current of your life. Many believe that turning points always come with grand actions, but in the spiritual realm, turning points often begin with a very gentle softening of the heart. You are accustomed to making decisions based on analysis, on experience, on what you have seen and endured. But today, I invite you into another way, deciding from trust. Trust is not closing your eyes to reality. Trust is looking straight at reality and still choosing to place your heart in my hands. You may not yet know what comes next. You may still carry many unanswered questions. But the decision before you now does not require answers. It only requires you to acknowledge that you do not want to continue alone. And when you acknowledge that, I do not see you as weak, but as someone mature enough to know they need support. Remember the times in the past when you tried to move forward by your own strength and became exhausted, not because you lacked ability, but because you were carrying burdens never meant for you to bear alone. You told yourself that if you just tried a little harder, endured a little longer, everything would be fine. But, my child, some little longers stretch into years, into sleepless nights, into a gradual numbing of the heart. I do not fault you for trying. I only grieve that you tried without allowing me into the middle. The decision you stand before today is the decision to allow me to walk with you in the next part of the journey, not behind you, for you to pull, not far away for you to manage alone, but beside you, in step, in the same direction. In Scripture, There is a very quiet moment when the prophet Elijah hears me, not in the strong wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in a gentle whisper. Do you see, my true presence does not always arrive in ways that overwhelm you. Often I come to settling. The moment you stop arguing with yourself, stop trying to control outcomes, and simply acknowledge, I am here. It is in that moment that I speak to you, the things noise never allows you to hear. Your decision in this part is not an emotional high, it is a decision of awareness. And a decision made in awareness is far more enduring than any momentary surge of feeling. My beloved child, you may be waiting for a clear sign, a strong confirmation that you have chosen rightly. I want you to know that confirmation does not always arrive immediately in the form you expect. Sometimes it comes first as a quiet peace spreading through your chest, as if an unseen burden has just been set down. Sometimes it comes as the simple fact that you no longer feel the need to run from your own thoughts. Sometimes it comes as a deeper breath that happens without effort. These things are small, yet they are very real. Do not dismiss them. They are evidence that your soul is returning to the original rhythm I placed within it from the beginning, not the rhythm of haste, but the rhythm of life. Choosing to stay today does not mean that from now on you will never doubt or grow weary. You are still human, and the road ahead will still have uneven places. But the difference lies here. You will no longer face those places alone. When you are tired, you may stop without shame. When you are confused, you may ask without fear of reproach. When you stumble, you may rise without carrying the label of failure. Your decision today opens a renewed bond, or rather, restores a bond that always existed but was covered by the dust of time. And that bond will become the foundation for everything I will do next in your life. I do not need you to promise that you will always be strong, always faithful, always correct. I only need you to be honest about your weariness, your fear, the small remnant of hope that still remains. That small hope is what I breathe upon so that it grows. You do not need to know the entire plan in order to keep walking. You only need to know who is holding your hand. And I am here, unchanging, unmoved, never withdrawing. When you choose me, you are only stepping into a love that has already chosen you. Your decision does not create my love, it simply allows you to enter and receive it. So accept that you are standing at the threshold of a shift. Not every shift is loud, many begin in silence. Yet from that silence, new choices will emerge. New directions will slowly take shape. And the things that once confused you will lose their grip. You do not need to rush ahead to see what part 2 will say. Simply know that you have already passed through the first door, the door of returning. And once that door has been opened, it will not be closed in your face again. My beloved child, I am not pulling you away from what you have just touched. I am widening your vision so you can understand why things unfolded as they did. There are moments in your life that you once thought were random, unlucky, or merely a chain of unfortunate coincidences. But in the spiritual realm, very little is truly random. Behind what your eyes can see, there are quiet movements, places where light and darkness collide, where small decisions carry consequences far greater than you realized. This is not meant to frighten you, but to steady you. For when you understand that you are not alone, you will stop blaming yourself, stop feeling lost, and begin to stand firmly in truth. You have felt pressures that were hard to explain, not a single dramatic crisis, but the sense of being surrounded, stretched from many sides at once, small things piling up, careless words that left you undone, doors that seemed about to open only to close at the last moment. You asked yourself, "Why does everything seem to be against me?" You thought perhaps you lacked wisdom, luck, or something others had. But my child, I tell you a deeper truth. There are seasons in life when resistance increases not because a person is weak, but because what they carry is valuable. Darkness does not attack what is empty. It seeks to delay what is about to awaken. I do not say this so you will think yourself greater than others, but so you will stop looking at yourself with contempt. You have underestimated yourself in your most exhausted moments. You have wondered whether you were worth protecting, worth preserving. I want you to know that even when you could not see it, protection was already there. Just as in ancient days, when my people walked out of Egypt, they saw only desert ahead and enemies behind. What they did not immediately see was the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night, shielding them and keeping the enemy at bay. Protection does not always appear in the form you expect. Often it comes as delay, redirection, or the very no's that grieved you. Yet those no's kept you from paths that would have wounded your soul far more deeply. In the unseen realm, there are conflicts you are not invited into, not because you are irrelevant, but because you are protected. Some of your prayers were heard the moment you whispered them, though you did not see the result at once. You thought I was slow, but in truth, there were things that had to be untangled before the answer could arrive. Just as Daniel prayed in humility, and the messenger later said the response had been sent from the first day but was hindered along the way. That did not weaken the promise. It revealed that there are layers of battle you are not meant to carry. You only need to remain in trust. The rest I have entrusted to those appointed to guard and protect you, my child. When I speak of Michael as an image of protection, I do not want you to imagine something distant or abstract. I want you to understand a spiritual principle. You are not exposed to unseen pressures. There have been negative thoughts that came to you at your weakest moments, whispering that you were about to break, that you could not endure any longer. Yet, in those very moments, you did not collapse as you feared. You rose the next day. You did what needed to be done. You preserved a measure of goodness within your heart. You thought this was simply because you were used to enduring. But I tell you, it was because you were being shielded. Not every arrow reaches its target. Some were stopped long before you realized you were in danger. Look back at the times you thought you had almost lost everything. There were decisions you did not make, relationships you did not enter, compromises you refused at the last moment without fully understanding why. At the time, you may have blamed yourself for hesitation or lack of courage, yet often, that was quiet guidance keeping you from entanglements that would have drained your soul. You could not see the whole picture, so you saw only loss. But I saw the entire landscape, and I chose to hold you back, not to slow you down, but to keep you safe. I want you to stop asking, "What did I do wrong?" and begin asking, "What is being protected within me?" That second question will change how you see everything. When you view your life through the lens of failure, you will always search for fault. But when you view it through the lens of preservation, you will begin to recognize meaning even in what you do not yet understand. You have survived seasons that, had the version of you from years ago faced them, might have crushed you. That is not a coincidence. It is evidence that you have been prepared, little by little, for what is drawing near. I do not deny that you have been hurt. Protection does not mean the absence of pain. It means that pain was not allowed to destroy you. You cried. You doubted. You grew weary. Yet you preserved your core. You did not become completely bitter. You did not lose your capacity to love. You did not silence the voice of conscience within you. That is the clearest proof of guardianship. Some have faced fewer trials than you, yet their hearts are more closed than yours. This shows that strength is not measured by avoiding storms, but by retaining light after the storm has passed. As you enter this part 2, I want you to begin seeing your life with new eyes. You are not a victim of circumstances, but someone being led through them. There is a vast difference between the two. One causes you to shrink, the other allows you to rise. I am not asking you to understand everything at once. I am simply inviting you to keep your heart open to the truth that many things have been and are happening for you, not against you. And as you accept this truth, fear will gradually lose its place within you. Child, you have not been abandoned in the battle. You have been seen, called by name, and covered. What you have been sensing lately, the awakening, the inner trembling, the pull to remain, these are not products of imagination. They are signs that the veil is being drawn back. So you may understand that behind what you see, there is still a hand holding you very firmly. And from that foundation, I will lead you forward, step by step, into things you never thought you could enter. My beloved child, when a wall is about to fall, it does not collapse in silence. It trembles first. Those tremors are not signs of failure, but signals that change is approaching. You have felt these tremors within yourself, old thoughts no longer standing as firmly as before. Beliefs that once helped you survive, now revealing cracks. Familiar answers, no longer strong enough to soothe you. Do not be afraid of this. It is not loss. It is preparation for stepping out of a space that has become too small for you. There are walls within you built from unnamed fears, fear of abandonment, fear of failure, fear of hoping only to be broken again. These fears did not arrive in a single day, and they will not leave in a single day either. They stacked upon one another, becoming habits of vigilance. You learn to defend yourself before being hurt. You learn to keep your distance before anyone could wound you. You learn to lower expectations so disappointment would hurt less. All of this once helped you survive. But, my child, survival is not the final destination. A fuller life is waiting for you. And to enter it, the walls that once protected you must be dismantled at the right time, not all at once, not by force, but by light and truth. The climax of a battle does not always come in the form of a dramatic event. Often it comes as prolonged weariness, as the sense that things are no longer the same, as the recurring question, "Where am I going?" You have asked this question not because you are completely lost, but because you no longer wish to move forward by old momentum. The moment you began asking it, resistance increased. Voices tried to persuade you to return to familiar, safe ground. Reminders of past disappointments surfaced. Memories were stirred precisely when you were weakest. This is how darkness works, not by creating something new, but by reusing what is old to keep you standing still. I want you to know that you are not wrong for feeling the pressure intensify. That pressure is evidence that something within you is shifting out of its old position. When light enters a room that has long been dark, dust rises before it settles. You may feel discomfort in that moment, but that does not mean the light should not come in. On the contrary, it means the light is doing exactly what it is meant to do. Conflicting thoughts, emotions surfacing unexpectedly, restless sleep, all of these are signs that the wall is trembling. And I am here to remind you that you do not need to panic before trembling. I am in the process of making you freer, not more fragile. These days, You may notice that the things that once terrified you no longer hold the same power. They still appear, but they no longer paralyze you completely. You still feel anxious, but not hopeless. You are still tired, but you no longer want to give up as before. This is a clear sign that the wall is losing its authority. Its power never came from true strength, but from habit. When you begin to look directly at fear without turning away, fear loses its advantage. When you allow me to stand with you in moments of uncertainty, uncertainty is no longer a safe dwelling place for darkness. There is a reason this moment cannot be passed over. Not because I would leave if you did, but because if you pass it by, you would return to the old cycle just as it is about to be broken. You have come very close to the threshold of a deep inner transformation, a transformation that will not merely make you feel better, but will cause you to live differently. At this threshold, even the smallest choices carry great weight, staying or scrolling past, listening or dispersing, trusting or returning to defense. These choices are quiet, but they shape direction. You may wonder why I emphasize staying. It is because staying runs against your old habits. When uncomfortable, you were used to leaving. When confused, you were used to closing off. When afraid, you were used to controlling. But staying requires you to place your heart within my presence without advance guarantees. Staying is saying, I do not yet see everything, but I trust, and it is this trust that creates space for me to work. I do not work most powerfully when you control everything. I work most clearly when you allow me to lead. Not every tremor comes from outside. Some are internal questions about meaning, direction, what truly matters. You begin to realize that some successes are no longer worth it if they cost you peace. You grow uneasy with small compromises you once accepted. You begin to long for a life that is deeper, truer, less performative. This is not weakness, it is maturity. When the soul matures, it is no longer satisfied with surfaces. It demands truth, and truth always comes with the dismantling of structures that no longer fit. The climax of the battle is not the moment you are most pressured, but the moment you realize you have a choice. You can return to old ways, old reactions, old walls, familiar, falsely safe. Or you can stay in this uncertainty, trusting that I am leading you into a wider space. I do not force you. I simply make the path clear. And I tell you this truthfully, this path will not cause you to lose yourself. It will return you to yourself, the version you have not met for a long time because you had to hide so much. Beloved child, at this moment, I want you to look back at yourself with compassion. You did the best you could with the understanding you had at each stage. The walls you built were not because you lacked faith, but because you lacked support at that time. Now that I am supporting you, those walls are no longer necessary. You do not need to protect yourself through withdrawal. You are protected through presence. This is the greatest difference you are learning in this part. Let me say this as a confirmation: you did not arrive here by accident. You are here because you are ready for the next step, even if you cannot yet name it. That readiness does not come from having no fear, but from no longer allowing fear to decide for you. It is a quiet victory, but a very real one. And from this foundation, I will lead you forward not by pushing you ahead, but by walking with you, step by step, through doors that are gradually opening before you. My beloved child, you are approaching a point where many have stopped, not because they were lesser than you, but because they were tired and no longer believed that something else was waiting ahead. But you did not stop. You stayed, and because of that, The moment of redirection is beginning to reveal itself, not loudly, not dramatically, but very clearly in the unseen realm. There are interventions from heaven that do not come like thunder, but like a hand resting gently on your shoulder, firm enough for you to know you are no longer alone, gentle enough not to alarm you. This is such a moment. You do not need to strain to feel it. Simply notice that the heaviness within you has begun to change form. It has not vanished yet, but it no longer presses on you as before. That is the first sign of redirection. You once believed that divine intervention had to be accompanied by obvious external change, circumstances shifting, people changing, situations turning sharply. But often the deepest intervention takes place within, where you no longer react as you once did to what used to shake you. You face the same reality, yet you are no longer ruled by it. You still hear the same words, but they no longer take root as deeply. You still remember uncomfortable memories, but they no longer constrict your breath. This is not numbness, it is freedom taking shape. True freedom does not separate you from emotion. It gives you the right not to be dominated by emotion. In the spiritual realm, a moment of redirection is often marked by a transfer of authority. Before, fear spoke and you listened. Before, memory led and you followed. Before, defense decided and you complied. But now, you are beginning to hear another voice, not louder, but truer. This voice does not rush you forward, nor threaten you backward. It invites you to stand still and see clearly. This is the voice of truth. When truth begins to take its place, other voices naturally weaken, not because you force them down, but because they no longer have a center to cling to. I am speaking to you now, so you will recognize that what is happening is not temporary. This is a reordering, my child. There are interventions of heaven that you only recognize in hindsight. But there are also interventions your soul senses immediately, like an inexplicable lightness. You may be experiencing that now, a rare stillness between thoughts, a deeper breath than usual, a peace that does not come from problems being resolved, but from knowing you are being held. Do not dismiss these signs. They are not fleeting emotions. They are the result of interventions that have already taken place behind the veil. There are things that have been untangled without your awareness, pressures that were stopped before reaching you, paths that were closed so safer ones could open. Remember, this peace is not a reward for those who have done enough. It is the foundation for those who are being led. You once thought you had to be okay before moving forward. But the truth is, peace is given so that you can move forward. Peace does not arrive when everything is perfect. It arrives when you stop resisting the reality that you need support. In this part, I do not promise that all difficulties will disappear immediately, but I do affirm that you will no longer be submerged by them. There is a vast difference between carrying a burden and being carried by it. And now, you are stepping to the other side of that difference. This redirection also brings a subtle change in how you see yourself. You begin to stop defining yourself by what did not work out, to stop attaching old labels to yourself. You begin to see that you are not merely the sum of your failures or wounds. You are someone who passed through them without losing your core. And that core, your capacity to trust, to love, to hope, is being awakened again, not to make you naive, but to make you alive. There is a difference between naivete and aliveness. Naivete does not see danger. Aliveness sees danger but does not allow it to freeze the heart. In the ancient stories, when my people stood before the Jordan River, the waters did not part the moment they looked at them. The waters parted only when they stepped in. A moment of redirection does not come when you wait for everything to be clear. But when you take a step in trust, you are doing that right now, even if you do not name it as such. Every line you read without turning away is a step. Every time you allow your heart to open a little more is a step. And it is these small steps that have activated the intervention you are now sensing. Heaven does not wait for you to be perfect before acting. Heaven responds to willingness. From this moment on, some things in your life will begin to lose their influence. Not because they disappear, but because you no longer grant them the authority to define you. Concerns that once occupied your entire mind will grow smaller. Fears that once caused hesitation will no longer decide in your place. You will discover an inner space, space to think, to feel, to choose. That space is where peace resides. And that peace is not as fragile as you once thought. It is set upon a foundation of protection you cannot see. Yet that has always been present. You have passed through the peak of the battle without being crushed. You did not merely survive, you were repositioned. That repositioning will gradually reveal itself in the way you respond, in the way you choose, in the way you face a new day. You will not need to strive to become different. The difference will emerge naturally because the foundation has changed. And that foundation is presence, my presence in your life. Not distant, not interrupted, not conditional. My beloved child, what is unfolding within you is no longer latent. It is beginning to find its way outward, not to be displayed, but to be expressed in the right place, at the right time. There is a very gentle law in spiritual life. What is healed on the inside will, sooner or later, be reflected on the outside. When you look back, you will realize you have placed yourself in a different position than before. You may begin to notice that the way you react to life has changed. Things that once stole an entire day of your peace now touch you only briefly. Words that once caused you to unravel no longer take such deep roots. Not because you have become numb, but because you no longer allow everything to pass straight into the center of your identity. You have learned without yet naming it how to create a healthy distance between events and your own worth. That distance is not coldness, it is maturity. And within that distance, you begin to hear more clearly how I am leading you. The first outward signs are often very humble. A conversation unfolds differently. A small decision is made with peace instead of anxiety. An opportunity appears that you once would have avoided out of fear. But now you no longer feel bound by that fear. You may not yet call this a door opening, but I tell you that is exactly what it is. True doors do not always open with great noise. Often, they open when you realize you have the right to step through, and that right does not come from your perfection, but from being restored to your proper position. There are things I have reserved for this moment, not because I am withholding, but because if you had received them earlier, you would have misunderstood them. You once asked for recognition, affirmation, validation from the outside. But I allowed you to walk through seasons of being unseen so that you could learn that your value does not rest in the eyes of others. Now that you are no longer governed by that need, those eyes will begin to change, not because you are trying to impress, but because light, when returned to its rightful place, naturally draws attention. You do not need to promote yourself. True life speaks for itself. Not every open door requires you to walk through it. One of the clearest signs of restoration is discernment. You will begin to sense more clearly what brings life and what drains it. You will stop condemning yourself for saying no to things that once exhausted you. You will realize that the peace within you is worth more than pleasing everyone. This does not make you selfish, it makes you honest. And honesty with yourself is the foundation for faithfulness to what I entrust to you. Some people from your past may reappear in your life not to pull you back into old cycles, but to show you how much you have changed. These encounters will no longer unsettle you as before. You will find that you can stand firmly within yourself, without proving, without explaining. This is a sign that old wounds no longer hold authority. You do not need to sever every connection to be free. Sometimes freedom is proven by your ability to be present without being consumed. And if certain connections need to close, you will close them in peace without resentment, without inner torment. In the ancient stories, when the blind were touched, the first thing they did was not to run and tell everyone, but to see. Seeing came before action. You are in that stage now. I am recalibrating how you see yourself, how you see others, how you see the road ahead. You will begin to notice details you once overlooked, small alignments, meaningful coincidences, words that arrive at just the right moment. Do not rush to call them random. They are the language life uses to confirm that you are walking in the right direction. Not so you become dependent on signs, but so you are encouraged while your heart is still learning to trust more deeply. True restoration always carries new responsibility, not a heavy burden, but responsibility toward the life that has been returned to you. You will notice that you no longer wish to waste time on things that do not nourish your soul. You will choose more carefully where you place your attention, whom you open your heart to, what you allow to shape your inner rhythm. This does not make your life smaller, it makes it deeper. And a deep life is always more sustainable than a wide but hollow one. I am not saying that everything ahead will be smooth and without challenge, but I am saying that challenges will no longer cause you to lose your sense of direction. You will know where you are going, even when you cannot yet see every step. This certainty does not come from controlling the future, but from knowing who is holding your hand. And when you know that, external shifts no longer have the power to throw you into panic as before. You do not need to rush to prove that you have changed. Time will do that for you. Small choices, different responses, reordered priorities. These will tell the story you do not need to explain with words. And within that quiet unfolding, something significant is being formed. Hold this in your heart as you move forward if doors are opening. You do not need to rush through them in fear of missing out. You may walk in peace, because what is meant for you will not pass you by if you move slowly. What is true does not need to be seized. It waits for you at the right time. And I, the one who led you here, will continue to lead you onward, not hurried, not delayed, not out of rhythm. My beloved child, I want you to recognize that the true change taking place within you is not touching only isolated thoughts or emotions. It is spreading into the way you relate to others and to yourself. Relationships are an honest mirror. They reflect the level of freedom inside you. When you are being restored, the connections around you also begin to shift, not because you intentionally change them, but because you are no longer standing in the same place. And when one person changes position, the entire surrounding structure is forced to adjust. You may begin to notice that certain conversations no longer flow along the old familiar patterns. Some people who once occupied a great deal of space in your heart no longer hold the same influence. Not because you have grown cold, but because you have stopped seeking from them what only I can give. Before, you may have placed too many expectations on others, the expectation to be understood, to be affirmed, to be allowed to stay. When those expectations were unmet, you were hurt, and then you withdrew. But now, because your foundation no longer rests on human responses, those relationships naturally lose the power they once held. You can still love, but you no longer trade your peace to preserve a connection that has run out of life. Some relationships will quietly drift back not because of major conflict, but because the rhythms no longer align. This may make you sad, because you are not someone who lets go easily. You tend to hold on longer than necessary, because you honor memories and what once was. But my child, honoring the past does not mean living in it. Some people were given to you for a season to teach you something, to support you, or to show you clearly what you do not want to become. When that season ends, letting go is not betrayal. It is faithfulness to the process of growth. You do not need to burn bridges to move forward. Sometimes it is enough simply not to walk back across them. Pay attention to another subtle change. You begin to explain yourself less. Before, you felt the need to clarify, to prove, to justify yourself so you would not be misunderstood. You feared that if you stayed silent, others would create a story about you that worked against you. But now, you are no longer driven by that fear. You are beginning to understand that not every misunderstanding needs correction, and not every gaze needs to be satisfied. This freedom does not make you careless. It releases you from the burden of controlling how others perceive you. You have learned to let the truth of your life speak for itself over time. At the same time, I am resetting new connections, not necessarily with entirely new people, but with relationships of a different depth. You will begin to recognize those with whom you do not need to strain. Conversations with them do not drain you. They allow you to be more fully yourself. You do not need to perform or hide. Their presence is not loud, yet it is nourishing. Do not rush this. Relationships like these often arrive slowly, but they endure. And when you recognize them, you will know not by logic, but by the peace in your heart. There will be moments when you must face the truth that some relationships you hoped would change simply do not. This is not your failure, nor a sign that you did not try hard enough. It is only confirmation that not everyone is meant to walk with you into the new season. I do not call you to pull everyone along. I call you to be faithful to your own journey. And when you are faithful, those who are meant to walk with you will naturally find the same rhythm. Do not forget, letting go does not mean loss. Often, letting go is the only way not to lose yourself. You have been in relationships where you had to dim your light so others would not feel uncomfortable. You have stayed silent when you needed to speak, compromised when you needed to hold boundaries. I do not fault you for this. You acted according to what you understood at the time. But now, as you are being restored, I do not want you returning to patterns that drain you. You were not created to live in constant contraction. You were created to breathe. In the ancient stories, some followed Jesus for a distance, then turned back when his words became hard to hear, not because the words were wrong, but because they were not ready to change their inner position. Do you see? True closeness always requires change. But I do not leave you alone in that change. I am here to teach you how to set boundaries without hardness, how to love without losing yourself, how to be present without being consumed. These are not skills learned from books. They are formed through the restoration you are now experiencing. In this season, you may feel a very particular kind of sadness, not sadness over losing something bad, but sadness in saying goodbye to what was familiar. That sadness is not wrong. It is proof that you lived sincerely and loved sincerely. But do not let that sadness persuade you to return to structures that no longer fit. You can carry gratitude and still move forward. You can remember without staying. You can bless without turning back. The changes in your relationships will also bring changes in how you see yourself. You will begin to honor your own inner signals more. instead of dismissing them to preserve surface harmony. You will realize that inner peace is not a luxury, but a necessity. And when you protect that peace, you do not become selfish, you become healthy. Only a healthy person can love in a way that lasts. If some relationships are leaving, it is not a sign of your failure. If you are setting boundaries, it is not a sign that you have become difficult. It is a sign that you are living honestly with what I am doing within you. And what I am doing is not to separate you from the world, but to place you in the world with a steadier heart. Child, pause for a moment and recognize something very important. What is happening now is no longer fragmented change in isolated pieces, but a process of integration forming within you. Before, you may have lived with invisible compartments, one for faith, one for daily life, one for what you believed to be right, another for what you felt you had to do in order to survive. That division was not because you were false, but because you were trying to adapt in a world that often demands fragmentation. But my child, the soul was not created to live fragmented. It was created to live in coherence where what you believe, what you speak, and how you live begin to converge into one. My beloved child, this integration does not come by command or by strained effort. It comes like a natural current when you stop trying to be two different people in two different spaces. You begin to realize that faith is not something you turn on at certain moments and then turn off when facing reality. Faith is breath. It is how you see. It is the foundation beneath the small choices of each day. When you allow faith to return to its rightful place, you no longer feel torn between what you believe and how you must live. You no longer feel the need to compromise in order to survive, nor to withdraw in order to preserve belief. You begin to live more fully, even though the road does not become easier. I want you to understand that this inner integration also brings a very different kind of peace, not a peace that comes from everything being fine, but a peace that comes from no longer fighting against yourself. Before, you may have argued internally, again and again. One part of you wanted to trust, another feared being hurt, one part longed to move forward, another wanted to remain in familiar ground. Those inner conflicts exhausted you, not because you were weak, but because you were pulling yourself in opposite directions. Now, as you allow truth to stand at the center, those voices begin to realign. Not all of them fall silent, but they no longer tear you apart. You can hear them without being dragged by them. This integration also changes the way you pray. You no longer come to me only to ask for something and then leave when you do not see results. You begin to stay. You begin to bring your whole life, small tasks, everyday decisions, simple joys before me. Your prayers become less like a list and more like a conversation. And in that conversation, you do not need special language or heightened emotion. You only need to be real. That reality is where I meet you most easily. As you integrate within, you will be less distracted by comparisons without. You will no longer measure your life harshly against the lives of others. You will stop asking why one person moves faster or another seems to receive more. Not because you no longer have dreams, but because you have rediscovered your own rhythm. Every life has its rhythm. When you walk in yours, you do not need to chase anyone else's pace. You do not need to prove that you are progressing. True progress will be felt in the growing steadiness of your spirit day by day. In the ancient writings, it is said that the wise build their house upon rock. That rock is not glamorous. It is a foundation that does not shift when storms come. This inner integration is that rock. When your life is built upon it, You no longer fear storms exposing what you were trying to hide. Because you are no longer living divided. You no longer need to protect an image. You only need to guard the truth. And truth, though not always applauded, always liberates. From here, your choices become simpler, though not always easier. You will know when to say yes and when to say no without long explanations. You will know when to move forward and when to wait without condemning yourself. You will discover that guidance does not come through loud signs, but through a quiet clarity within. That clarity is the fruit of the integration you are entering. I am not saying you will no longer make mistakes. You will still learn, still stumble, still adjust. But the difference is this: you will no longer lose yourself each time you fail. You will no longer define your worth by your errors. You will learn from them, correct them, and continue forward without carrying the weight of shame. This is the sign of a soul that has been set back on its true axis, not perfect, but steady. You are becoming a more whole person, not because every contradiction has disappeared, but because you have stopped allowing contradiction to rule you. You are learning to live with truth, walk by faith, and love without self-erasure. This integration will be the foundation for everything I will do next in your life. From here on, what comes to you will not only touch you from the outside, but will resonate with what I have already placed within you. Carry this integration with you as you step into the next stretch of the journey. You do not need to hold it tightly, it will hold you. And as you continue walking, you will realize that this consistency between what you believe and how you live is the quiet strength that is reshaping your life. Day by day, choice by choice, step by step, my beloved child. The season of restoration does not arrive as a reward after you have endured long enough, but as a current that begins to flow once the inner blockages have been released. Restoration is not a miracle that erases the past. It is a new capacity to live without being bound by the past. You have moved through the previous parts with rare honesty, without hiding, without skimming, without rushing. That honesty has opened the way for grace to begin operating more visibly. You will not need to hunt for signs. Signs will find you, because your life is being realigned to its true axis. There were delays that once caused you to doubt yourself. You wondered whether you had missed the right moment, whether the years of waiting were wasted. But, my child, in my realm, delay is not always lateness. Often, it is protection in a quiet form. A seed does not sprout when it is exposed too early. It needs darkness, moisture, and time for roots to go deep. You were in the root stage, and now, as the roots have grown strong enough, life is beginning to press upward. This will show itself in changes that seem small but endure. You work with a different posture. You face challenges with a different breath. You make decisions no longer driven by fear. This is true restoration, not loud, but irreversible. Grace does not come to live life for you. It comes to help you live rightly. When grace is activated, it does not make everything automatically easy. It makes what is right possible. You will notice that doors once closed do not open because you knock louder, but because you knock in rhythm. Opportunities that come to you now no longer require you to trade away your peace or your dignity. You do not need to shrink yourself to fit the door. The door is widened to receive you. This distinction matters greatly. It shows that you are no longer searching for a place to stand. You are being invited into the place that fits you. Before, time may have felt like an enemy reminding you of what had not yet arrived, of years already gone. Now, time begins to feel like a companion. You are no longer driven by the fear of being late. nor pulled backward by regret. You are learning to live fully in the present without losing direction. When you inhabit the present moment, grace has room to work. And in that space, what was once stuck begins to move. You may see an old process resume, a conversation reopen, an idea you thought had cooled suddenly ignite with new life. Do not rush to call this coincidence. This is restoration taking on an outward form, my beloved child. The season of restoration will also touch your body and your emotions in ways you may not expect. You may sleep more deeply, or wake with a lighter sense within. You may notice that stress responses that once rose quickly now slow down, giving you a pause, a space in which you can choose a different response. That pause is a gift. It gives you the power of choice instead of reflex. And when you choose from peace, the outcome changes. Not every problem disappears, but the way you move through them no longer drains you. This is restoration reaching into the deeper layers of life. When grace begins to operate, there will be voices that try to make you doubt the goodness that is coming. They whisper, "Don't hope too much. Don't celebrate too soon. It will be the same in the end." These voices are not new. They are the inheritance of seasons in which you were disappointed. But, my child, wisdom is not the same as pessimism. You can be cautious and still open-hearted. You can learn from the past without allowing the past to rule the future. This season of restoration invites you to practice that balance, keeping your heart open without being naive, walking in trust without being reckless. My grace does not ask you to abandon your mind. It asks you to place both mind and heart in proper order. In the ancient writings, there were those who were healed and then sent to live differently, not simply return to their old lives. They were not touched merely to be made well. They were touched to become witnesses of a new life. So it is with you. This season of restoration is not only so that you may feel better, but so that you may live rightly. You will notice your priorities being reordered, what is truly worth your energy, and what needs to be released. You will find yourself less drawn into fruitless arguments, less stirred by things that do not nourish life. This is not indifference, it is focus. And focus is the channel through which grace flows with strength. You may see some things arrive faster than you expected, while others still require time. Do not let that difference unsettle you. Grace does not work by a single pattern. It works according to what will establish you most firmly. Some things, if they came too quickly, would throw you off rhythm. Others, if they came too slowly, would discourage you. I know what is fitting for you. Your task is not to force the process, but to keep your heart in a posture of readiness. Readiness does not mean tension. Readiness is alertness rooted in peace. When you look back on the road you have traveled, you will see that this season of restoration did not appear out of nowhere. It is the result of quiet choices, staying when you had reason to leave, speaking truth when silence would have been easier, letting go when fear tempted you to cling. Those choices prepared the way for grace. And grace does not forget its source. It honors small faithfulness with great support. Now I invite you to walk in this part with open eyes and a light heart. Do not measure progress by outward markers. Listen instead to the rhythm of life within. When you notice that you no longer feel pressured to prove yourself, that is a good sign. When you can wait without panic, that is a good sign. When you can receive without fear of loss, that is a very good sign. These are indicators that grace is being activated in a sustainable way. Continue walking with humble confidence. You do not need to announce what I am doing. You only need to live honestly in it. Time will speak on your behalf. And as you move forward, You will discover that restoration is not a destination, but a new way of living where each day you choose life instead of defense, peace instead of haste, trust instead of control. My beloved child, I want you to understand that grace does not come only to lift you up, but also to teach you how to stand firm when the winds shift. A season of restoration does not mean all challenges cease. It means you are no longer swept away when challenges arise. What I am establishing within you now is a new resilience, not a closed, rigid toughness, but a steady flexibility. You do not need to fear that you will return to how you were, because you are no longer standing on the old ground. The foundation has changed. The way you place your feet has changed. And that is what makes all the difference. There is something subtle you will begin to notice in this phase. New challenges no longer strike at your center as they once did. They may touch circumstances, schedules, or relationships, but they no longer shake your sense of worth. Before, every collision carried questions like, did I fail? Am I enough? Have I been left behind? Now, those questions no longer lead. You begin asking different ones. What is wise right now? What nourishes life? What needs to be released to preserve peace? A change in questions reveals a change in foundation. I do not remove challenges. I change how you walk through them. Remember, this grace is sustained not by tightening your grip, but by a life rhythm that has been reordered. You will learn to honor pauses, moments when you do not do more, say more, or decide more in order to listen. A pause is not stagnation, it is orientation. In those pauses, you will notice very small signals, a weariness that tells you to rest, a heaviness that tells you to speak honestly, a peace that tells you it is safe to continue. Do not dismiss these signals. They are the language of wisdom being etched into you as grace works. You may encounter invitations to return to old paths, not always obviously harmful ones, but those that feel familiar and easy. Familiar because you know how to manage them, easy because they do not require you to face new fears. But, my child, what is easy is not always what is right. I do not forbid you from those paths. I simply show you their outcome. The old ways may offer quick results, but they will take away the peace you have just regained. And I know you have learned enough to recognize that this price is no longer worth paying. When you say no to what is easy but not right, you are saying yes to enduring grace. My beloved child, in everyday life, sustaining grace is also connected to how you steward your energy. You no longer need to respond to every request, enter every debate, or carry responsibilities that were never entrusted to you. Before, you may have thought that saying no was selfish or unloving. Now you understand that boundaries are a form of care. When you protect your energy, you are protecting what I am building. You will see that saying no at the right time enables you to say yes in the right place. And a yes in the right place will bear lasting fruit. There will be days that feel very ordinary, even dull. Do not rush to assume that grace has stopped working. Enduring grace often operates within sanctified ordinariness, days when you work with honesty, love with patience, and rest with permission. Not every day carries a heightened sense of meaning, but every day lived in the right rhythm lays another stone for the new foundation. You will not always feel strong, but you will increasingly stand steady. That distinction matters. I want you to pay attention to how you speak to yourself in this season. Inner dialogue is where grace is either nurtured or eroded. If you continue to use harsh words toward yourself, you begin rebuilding the very walls I have helped you take down. But if you learn to speak to yourself with gentle truth, neither indulgent nor condemning, you preserve the space where grace can keep flowing. When you stumble, correct yourself. When you are tired, rest. When you are afraid, name it. Truth is always the shortest path back to the center. In the ancient stories, some who were healed were told, "Do not return to the old road," not because that road was forbidden, but because it no longer fit the new life they had received. So it is with you. There are habits that once helped you survive, but now they constrict you. I do not blame you if at times you miss their familiarity, but I remind you of something more important. You have tasted a different way of living, lighter, truer, steadier. When you remember that, you will no longer desire to return to what makes you shrink. Sustaining grace also means learning to face challenges without personalizing them. Not every difficulty is a sign that you are off course. Many difficulties are simply part of living truthfully. When you stop compromising, you will meet resistance. When you set boundaries, you will encounter misunderstanding. When you slow down to walk rightly, you will feel pressure. Do not let these things convince you to turn back. Let them confirm that you are stepping out of the old current. I am here to remind you that you do not need to please everyone in order to live rightly. Grace is sustained through small, repeated choices, not one single grand decision, but many small decisions made in the same direction. Today you choose honesty. Tomorrow you choose a timely rest. The next day you choose not to rush. These choices, layered together, form a path, and that path will lead you to places you once thought were far beyond reach, but are now possible because you are no longer scattered. My child, you do not need to guard grace with anxiety. Grace will guard you when you live in the right rhythm. You do not need to fear new challenges. They will meet a new person, someone who has learned to stand without closing off, to move forward without haste, to love without losing themselves. That is the mark of the season of restoration now set within you. My beloved child, I want you to pause and recognize something very important. True restoration is not measured only by feeling better, but by beginning to live differently in a natural way, without strain. This is the moment when grace is no longer merely touching you, but has begun to abide in you. It becomes breath, a new reflex, the ground beneath everyday choices. And here, you need reassurance so that you do not doubt the path you are walking. You will notice that situations which once triggered strong reactions, anger, anxiety, withdrawal, or self-blame no longer provoke the same responses, not because you have mastered emotional control, but because the inner source of those reactions has changed. You no longer view everything through a lens of defense. You no longer erect barriers before danger even appears. You begin to meet life with openness, without naivete, with calm, without indifference. This is a clear sign that restoration has reached a deep level, the level where instinct itself is being reshaped. The peace you now carry is not as fragile as you think. Before, you were accustomed to a peace dependent on circumstances, calm when things were smooth, unsettled when they were not. But this present peace no longer relies on circumstances. It is anchored in presence. And what is anchored in presence is not swept away by shifting winds. You may still have hard days, still experience fatigue, but that weariness no longer pulls you away from yourself. You no longer lose your center each time life trembles. In this season of restoration, I am healing not only what you are aware of, but also what you once accepted as normal, even though it drained you. There were ways of thinking you assumed were simply how you are, ways of enduring you thought were just how life is. Now you begin to see that many of these were not your true nature, but learned responses from seasons of insecurity, As safety is restored, those responses naturally fall away. You do not have to force them out, they simply cease to be necessary. My beloved child, in this stage, I want to speak to you about a subtle challenge that often comes after restoration, the fear of losing the goodness you have just received. You may begin to wonder, will this peace last? Will I slip back into who I was before? Am I fooling myself into thinking everything is okay? These questions are not wrong. They show that you care. But if you allow them to rule you, they can turn into anxiety disguised as caution. Hear this clearly. You do not preserve grace through vigilance. You preserve grace through trust. Trust is not drifting aimlessly. Trust is continuing to live in the rhythm you are learning. Even when emotions fluctuate, there will be days when you do not clearly feel my presence. But that does not mean it is absent. Just as you are not always aware of your breathing, yet you would know immediately if it stopped. So my presence in your life does not need to be constantly felt in order to be real. It is operating beneath the surface, holding you steady, adjusting your rhythm, protecting you from deeper falls. You do not need to check on it every day. You only need to live in alignment with it. I also want you to understand that this restoration is preparing you for expansion, but not expansion in the way the world usually defines it. Not more activity to prove your worth. Not heavier burdens to demonstrate your capacity. True expansion is when you are able to carry more without losing yourself. And to make that possible, this Part 4 has placed something essential within you, the ability to recognize healthy limits. You will know when to stop, when to move forward, when to say enough. This ability does not make you smaller, it makes you durable. Remember this, you are no longer someone striving to earn peace. You are no longer someone trying to prove that you have changed. You are no longer someone living in fear of returning to old patterns. You are someone learning how to remaining in truth, remaining in a healed rhythm of life, remaining in a presence that does not demand perfection from you. And it is this remaining that allows grace to endure. This stage closes here like a foundation that has been completed. You do not need to keep reinforcing it every day. You simply need to walk forward upon it. What is coming in Part V will ask you to step outward more, to carry more, to be more visibly present. But you will not enter it with a trembling heart as before. You will step forward with an inner stillness, a stillness that does not come from everything being calm, but from having learned how to stand steady within movement. My beloved child, expansion does not come to test how much you can endure, but to reveal what I have sown within you long ago that simply did not yet have space to grow. When the foundation is firm, new space can be added without collapsing the structure. You are at exactly that moment, the moment when greater things can be entrusted to you without costing you the peace that has been restored. You may sense a very gentle yet very real invitation, an invitation to step beyond the old safety circle, not to prove your worth, but to serve life in a wider way. This invitation may come through new responsibilities, unexpected opportunities, or roles you never imagined you would carry. Do not evaluate them by the measures of the past when you were tired, insecure, and constantly bracing yourself. You are no longer standing in that place. I do not assign you anything without equipping you sufficiently to carry it. And the most important equipment you now have is not skill or title, but inner stability. My child, true expansion always comes with new clarity of motive. Before, you may have done many good things out of fear of being left behind, a desire to be seen, or an inability to say no. Those motives did not make you wrong. They reflected a season in which you needed to be acknowledged. But now, as you have been reset in truth, Your motives are being refined. You will begin to do what is right, not to be noticed, but because it aligns with what you believe. You will recognize opportunities that look appealing yet do not resonate with the life within you, and you will have the courage to decline them without guilt. Conversely, there will be invitations that are not glamorous but carry deep meaning, and you will know that this is where you are meant to be present. Influence is not measured by how many people know your name, but by the quality of presence you carry. Some people enter a room and bring pressure, others enter and bring peace. You are being led to become the latter, not because you are trying to shine, but because the light within you is no longer obscured by fear and defense. When you live with integrity, your presence naturally carries influence. Others may not be able to name what has changed, but they will feel the steadiness, the clarity, the reliability that is enduring influence, quiet, not easily shaken. In this season of expansion, I am teaching you an important lesson. Not all increase comes from doing more. Sometimes increase comes from doing what is right, placing energy where it bears fruit, releasing what only consumes. You will learn to distribute your strength wisely, not from guilt, but from discernment. You will discover that rest does not make you less effective, it makes you enduring. And endurance is what I seek when I widen the scope of your life. You may also feel a subtle pressure to maintain an image as more is entrusted to you. I tell you this so you will not stumble. My expansion does not require performance. You do not need to become a different version of yourself to deserve what I give. You only need to be faithful to who you truly are, now a person being healed, learning to live in the right rhythm. When you live this way, you will not be drained by expectations. You will not need to hide on days when you are tired. You will know how to ask for help without shame. This honesty will guard you from pride and from exhaustion. In the ancient writings, someone was entrusted with many talents, not because they never failed, but because they were faithful in small things. You have been faithful in small things, in very quiet ways, staying when you could have left, speaking truth when you could have avoided it, releasing when you could have clung out of fear. These choices were not applauded, but they cleared the way for today's expansion. And I do not forget the source of that expansion. I do not lift you away from the foundation when I raise you. I set you more firmly upon it. As you step into new responsibilities, there will be moments when you must learn to lead without controlling, to serve without losing yourself, to give without being depleted. These skills do not come from manuals. They grow out of continual connection to the center. Whenever you sense yourself drifting out of rhythm, becoming hurried, tense, or easily irritated, treat that not as condemnation, but as a gentle reminder to return. Expansion does not break you. It invites you back to the center more often. You have the right to grow without sacrificing peace. If a path demands that exchange, slow down and listen. I do not lead you through doors that open by anxiety. My doors open with inner confirmation, a quiet, steady sense of this is right. When you step through such doors, you will not need to run. You will walk, and each step will be supported. This stage does not end with a checklist of tasks, but with a way of living expansion through consistency. You do not need to become more in order to be worthy. You only need to become truer to what I am doing within you. And when you live in what is true, expansion will follow naturally, as a shadow follows the form. My beloved child, I want you to understand that leadership and influence do not begin from a position above others, but from deep honesty with yourself. You are not called to stand over, but to stand among people and people, between pressure and peace, between chaos and order. The influence I entrust to you does not require you to speak louder, move faster, or act more forcefully. It requires you to stand in the right place, and that right place always begins at the restored center within you. You may once have thought that leadership meant always being strong, always having answers, always keeping everyone else in rhythm. But, my child, that kind of leadership easily drains you and makes others dependent. I am teaching you a different way, leading through steady presence. When you are fully present, listening before responding, discerning before acting, resting before exhaustion, you create a safe space for others to return to their own center. Not everyone needs advice. Many need a peaceful breath that allows them to see clearly. And in this season, you are being entrusted with the ability to carry that breath of peace into the places you enter. Sustainable influence always walks with humility. Humility is not lowering your worth, it is not needing to display it. You do not need to remind others what you know, what you have endured, or where you stand. A life lived rightly will speak for itself. You will notice that when you stop proving, others begin listening. When you stop controlling, others begin trusting. When you stop rushing, others begin seeing clearly. This is not strategy. It is the fruit of an inner life that has been reordered. Be attentive to a subtle temptation in this season of expansion, the temptation of busyness disguised as usefulness. You may be invited to do more, show up more, solve more, but not every invitation comes from wisdom. You are free to ask, does this nourish life? Does this align with the rhythm I am leading? Does this pull me away from the center? When you ask these questions, you are not being irresponsible. You are protecting what I am building. Leadership that cannot say no will soon become a burden, even to those it seeks to help. In this stage, I am teaching you how to serve without losing yourself. Service is not pleasing everyone, nor sacrificing yourself into depletion. True service flows from guarded abundance. When you serve from emptiness, you will look to others to refill you. When you serve from fullness, you can give without needing to take back. You are learning how to keep the inner source protected through timely rest, healthy boundaries, and honest speech when needed. These things do not make you less devoted, they make your devotion sustainable. Remember, your influence is not measured by how many people follow you, but by how many are strengthened after encountering you. Some will be lifted by a word spoken at the right time, some by listening without judgment, some simply by seeing you remain unpanicked under pressure, learning how to stand themselves. You do not need to do everything for everyone. You only need to be present rightly for those I place within your reach. The rest, I will handle. In the ancient writings, it is taught that the greatest becomes the servant of all. This does not mean erasing yourself, but placing strength in its proper position. The more that is entrusted to you, the more often you must return to the center. That center is not power, it is connection. Each time you feel tension rising, take it as a gentle reminder to return, not to retreat, but to realign. Timely realignment keeps you from drifting too far. There will be moments when you must make difficult decisions, not because of a lack of information, but because you must choose between what is right and what is easy. I do not promise that every right decision will be applauded, but I do promise that it will keep you free. And freedom is the ground of lasting influence. When you choose rightly without bitterness, choose slowly without fear of delay, choose peace without avoidance, you teach more by your life than by your words. Leadership is not always being out front. At times you will be called to walk alongside, at times to step back, at times to empower others. Empowering does not diminish your role, it multiplies it. When you trust others to grow, they will grow. When you hold everything in your own hands, you will soon tire. You are learning to trust not naively, but wisely so that your influence can spread without depending on your constant presence. True humility also allows you to receive feedback without defense. You will not need to be right in every conversation. You can learn without shame, adjust without self-condemnation, apologize without collapsing. This makes you trustworthy. People trust those who can stand in truth, even when truth asks them to change. You are becoming such a person not because you are perfect, but because you are honest. Lead by rhythm, not by pressure. Influence through consistency, not intensity. Serve from guarded abundance, not from erosion. When you live this way, you will not need to worry about your influence. Influence will find you at the right place, at the right time. My beloved child, the balance you are learning is not a static state, but a living rhythm guided from within. Before, you may have thought that either you move forward with strength, or you stop to rest, as if the two were opposites. But in this season, I am teaching you something deeper. Expansion and rest do not exclude one another. They sustain one another. When you learn to rest in the right place, your expansion becomes enduring. When you expand in the right rhythm, your rest becomes deep. You may have gone through seasons of moving forward by your own strength, where every step was paid for with tension and exhaustion. You moved fast, but not far. You achieved things, but you could not sustain them. I do not fault you for those seasons. You acted according to what you knew at the time. But now, having been restored, I no longer lead you by pressure. I lead you by rhythm. That rhythm neither rushes nor stalls. It is like breathing: inhale to receive, exhale to give, work to bear fruit, rest to keep the roots healthy. When you live by this rhythm, you will no longer feel as though you are racing against life. The rest I speak of is not merely physical stopping. It is an inner state in which you are no longer driven by the fear of being left behind. You can do much without strain, carry responsibility without heaviness. True rest does not come when you have no responsibilities. It comes when you no longer equate your worth with the volume of what you do. When you stop measuring yourself by productivity, you will find yourself working with greater focus and joy. This is not a paradox. It is how life functions when it is set in the right order. This balance requires you to keep listening to small signals. There are days when you are called to move forward, to make a decision, to speak, to step through a door. There are days when you are called to step back, to observe, to adjust, to rest. Wisdom does not lie in always advancing, but in knowing when to advance. You do not need to fear that rest will slow you down. Rest at the right time will keep you from going in the wrong direction. And going in the right direction matters more than going fast. In this season of expansion, there may be moments when you face comparison not from outside, but from old standards within you. You may wonder why you are not doing as much as before, why you are no longer pushing yourself as you once did. But I want you to look closely. You are not doing less, you are doing differently. You are not burning yourself to warm others, you are letting a steady light shine from a place where you are being nourished. This difference may not impress at once, but it will last. And I care more for what lasts than for what gains quick attention. Remember, rest is not an escape from necessary pressures. There are healthy pressures that help you grow, broaden your vision, and step beyond complacency. But healthy pressure is different from destructive pressure. You will learn to distinguish them by listening to your body and your soul. When pressure comes from guidance, it makes you alert and focused. When pressure comes from fear, it makes you shrink and lose connection. You do not need excessive analysis, you only need honesty with what you sense deep within. The balance you are learning will also shape how you organize daily life. You will no longer treat rest as a reward after you have done enough, but as an essential element for doing what is right. You will make room for stillness without guilt. You will guard spaces that are not filled with noise. Those spaces do not make you less effective. They are where I whisper what you need to hear to go farther. When you allow such spaces to exist, you are saying that you trust me more than you trust busyness. In the old stories, there were those who worked very hard for me, yet lost their first joy. They were not wrong in what they did. They were misaligned in the rhythm by which they lived. You are being kept from that by this very lesson. I do not need you to become someone perpetually weary from doing good. I want you to become someone enduring in doing good. And endurance is always nourished by rest in the right place. My child, there may be times when you must say not yet or not now to good opportunities. That does not make you less faithful. It shows that you honor the rhythm by which I am leading you. I do not give you every good thing at once. I give them in order so that you are not overwhelmed. When you trust that order, you will not panic when you have to wait. You will know that what is meant for you will come when you are ready to receive it without losing yourself. I want you to carry one principle with you. If a step forward pulls you away from your center, slow down. If a pause brings you closer to your center, treasure it. That's center connection. Peace. Consistency is where all healthy expansion begins. You do not protect that center through tension. You protect it by returning to it often. Each time you return, you will step out with greater clarity. You are learning to go far without getting lost, to carry weight without collapsing, to give without running dry. This is true maturity. And from this foundation, what lies ahead will not overwhelm you. You will step into it with a steady heartbeat, a clear mind, and a soul that has learned how to rest even while moving forward. My beloved, all that I have done in you from the beginning, healing, ordering, expanding, teaching you to rest, does not exist as separate fragments. They are converging into a new axis of life, where you are no longer pulled in opposing directions, where what you believe and how you live begin to merge naturally. This convergence is not loud, but it is unmistakable. It is like many small streams finally meeting and becoming a river, no longer confused about direction, no longer scattered in energy. You may notice that recently you no longer have to persuade yourself about your core values. Before, you may have known what was right but struggled to live it out. Now that struggle is easing, not because what is right has become easier, but because you have been placed in the right position to live what is right. When the inner axis is aligned, external choices no longer confuse you. You no longer have to ask so often, "How should I be to be accepted?" You begin to ask, "Does this align with the life that is operating within me?" And that question is enough to guide you. The completion I speak of is not a state of being finished, but a state of being rightly oriented. There are those who travel very far yet never feel they arrive, because they are not moving on the right axis. You are different. You are entering a new cycle with an established axis. This means you can continue learning, continue growing, continue adjusting without the deep sense of disorientation you once carried. When you stumble, you know how to rise without panic. When you wait, you know what you are waiting for. When you move forward, you know why you move. This clarity does not come from knowing everything. It comes from no longer losing your center. Look back on the road you have traveled not to take pride, but to recognize grace. There were stretches you thought were mere endurance, yet you were being prepared. There were silences you thought meant abandonment, yet I was protecting you from rhythms that would have broken you. There were times you were slowed while others sped ahead, and you blamed yourself. But now you can see that the slowing preserved your wholeness. Completion does not erase what you have been through. It restores meaning to it. My child, your purpose will not appear as a grand slogan set before your eyes. It will be revealed through consistency. You will notice that what you do, the relationships you maintain, and the decisions you make all begin to revolve around a single axis. You no longer feel as though you are living multiple lives in different contexts. You are one, wherever you are. That consistency is the clearest sign that your purpose is being revealed. When you live consistently, you no longer need to ask where your purpose is. Your purpose is being lived out each day. This new cycle does not come to separate you from the world, but to place you within it with a different inner strength. You will still face pressure, difficult choices, and people who do not understand you, but you will no longer be defined by these things. You no longer need to react in order to protect yourself. You can respond with clarity. You can stand firm without becoming rigid. You can remain gentle without becoming weak. This is lasting freedom, the kind of freedom that does not depend on everything going your way, but on knowing where you belong. In this cycle, you will also learn how to bring old things to a true close, not through resentment, but through inner completion. There are chapters of your life that will no longer need to be retold in order to explain who you are. You do not need to prove that you have moved on. The peace you carry will speak for you. When something has been completed within, it no longer demands attention. It becomes a foundation, no longer a burden. Scripture says there is a season for sowing and a season for reaping. But between sowing and reaping, there is also a season of tending when nothing loud seems to be happening. Yet life is taking shape. You have passed through the season of tending. This new cycle will begin to show you the first fruits, not so that you may boast, but so that you may be strengthened in knowing that what I am doing is real. Those fruits may come in very ordinary forms: a healthier relationship, a more fitting work, a steadier peace, a clearer inner voice. Do not dismiss these things. They are signs that completion is bearing fruit. I want to remind you of one thing so that you do not place new pressure upon yourself. This new cycle does not require you to always feel right. There will be days when things feel very clear, and days when they feel less so. That does not make this cycle any less real. Truth does not depend on daily feelings. When you are no longer swayed by your emotions, you will learn to remain faithful to the rhythm of life, even as feelings rise and fall. And that faithfulness will keep you on the right path far longer than any momentary inspiration. You are no longer searching for completion. You are living from completion. This does not mean you have reached the peak, but that you have been placed in the right current. In that current, you will continue to learn, continue to grow, continue to serve without the sense that you must chase something in order to be enough. You are enough to walk with me, and I am near enough to lead you step by step. My beloved, confirmation is not applause from the outside, but a deep inner stillness where you no longer need to look back to check whether you are approved. The final confirmation of this cycle does not come to excite you for a moment. It comes to seal a direction that you will no longer need to argue about within yourself. When something is sealed, it no longer needs to be defended with words. It stands firm through a truth that has been lived out. You will realize that recently, the things that once weighed heavily on your heart no longer carry the same weight. Not because they have disappeared from memory, but because they have lost their power. Letting go completely is not forgetting. It is no longer being led by what is old. You can remember without pain. Look back without being pulled backward. This is a sign that the old cycle has been completed within you. Even if outward circumstances are still gradually finding their order, do not confuse outward speed with inward truth. What has been completed at the core will soon find its fitting form in life. Within this confirmation, I invite you to say a full goodbye to the roles you once carried in order to survive. There were roles you had to strain to play in order to be strong, roles you had to remain silent in order to stay, roles you had to please in order not to be abandoned. Those roles did not make you wrong. They helped you pass through difficult seasons, but they are no longer needed. If you carry them into the new cycle, they will become burdens. Therefore, today's confirmation is permission. You are allowed to walk forward without wearing those old layers. This complete release may come with a very subtle sorrow, not because of loss, but because you realize how long you had to live misaligned. That sorrow does not need to be pushed away. Let it pass like a closing wave, not like an open wound. When you allow that sorrow to be acknowledged, it will complete its task release. And after that release, you will feel your heart grow lighter in a way that is real and enduring. This final confirmation also concerns what you no longer need to prove. Before, you may have spent energy trying to prove that you were good enough, faithful enough, changed enough. But this cycle closes with a simple truth: you do not need to prove what you have already become. When you live from truth, every effort to prove becomes unnecessary. You will speak less, yet live more clearly. You will explain less, yet be more deeply present, and that will make you free. Scripture says that when a seed falls into the ground and dies, it produces many seeds. That death is not loss, but transformation. You are also within that transformation. What you release does not make you smaller, it makes you truer. And truth always has the power to multiply. From this truth, new relationships will be formed, not out of the need to fill a lack, but out of resonance. New opportunities will come, not out of pressure, but out of alignment. New responsibilities will be entrusted not based on how much you can endure, but on how long you can keep the rhythm. When I speak of walking forward without turning back, I am not saying you will never remember. I am saying you will no longer settle in what is old. Turning back is not remembering. Turning back is allowing memory to set direction, and that will no longer happen. When you face new decisions, you will no longer ask, "Does this resemble what once hurt me?" You will ask, "Does this align with the life that is now operating within me?" The second question always leads you forward. Remember, this confirmation does not guarantee that everyone around you will immediately understand you. Some will continue to see you through old lenses. Some will be surprised that you no longer react as before. Do not let that pull you back into explaining or defending yourself. You do not need everyone's agreement in order to walk rightly. When you are no longer driven by the need to be understood, you will find yourself free to love without trading away your center. And love that is no longer mixed with fear becomes healthy love. My child, this final confirmation is also the sealing of trust. You no longer need to grasp every detail of the future. You can plan without obsession, prepare without panic. You know that some things will only become clear when you draw close enough. And that does not make you anxious. It makes you attentive enough to listen, to adjust, to recognize when to pause and when to move forward. This attentiveness is not tense, it is gentle and steady. What has been sealed does not need to be repeated. You do not need to remind yourself of your resolve every day. You only need to live in alignment with it. Each day you live rightly. That seal is strengthened. And over time, you will notice that what once required effort has become reflex. That is the clearest evidence of confirmation. Now you no longer carry the old burdens. You carry clarity. You do not carry the fear of repeating the past. You carry discernment. You do not carry the pressure to succeed. You carry faithfulness to a way of life. These things will keep you safer than any plan ever could. My beloved, freedom that does not turn back is not a fleeting emotional high, but a grounded state that has taken root. It does not need to be protected by vigilance, nor proven through loud actions. This freedom stands within you like a pillar when the winds come. It does not fall when silence comes. It is not empty. You no longer need to glance back to check whether you are walking correctly, because what is right has become the place where you stand, not merely the direction you are heading. From here, your life begins to carry a rhythm of gentle authority, not the authority of control, but the authority of consistency. You say yes and no with a clarity that does not require lengthy explanation. You are present without needing to dominate. You step into new spaces without wearing old armor. This does not distance you, it makes you trustworthy. Others will sense that in your presence, they are neither pushed to hurry nor pulled backward. They are invited to return to the true rhythm of their own lives. My child, freedom without turning back also means that you no longer negotiate with fear. Fear may still visit like an old memory knocking at the door, but it is no longer invited inside. You do not need to argue with it to prove that you are strong. You simply do not grant it the authority to decide. When fear is no longer in the driver's seat, wisdom naturally takes the wheel. And when wisdom leads, you will find yourself choosing paths that are not flashy but enduring, not hurried but rightly timed. You live more fully in the ordinary rhythms of life. You eat, work, rest, and love with a new quality of presence. You may not always feel spiritual, yet your life is sacred because it is lived in truth. You no longer separate hours of prayer from hours of work. The two flow together as one stream. When you work with integrity and rest with permission, you are worshipped throughout your life, and that worship needs no audience. There is a very subtle change. You will notice you no longer need emotional highs to know you are on the right path. You do not require dramatic signs for reassurance, nor intense feelings for confirmation. The quiet within you is enough. When something is not aligned, you sense it early and gently. When something is aligned, you sense it deeply and firmly. This discernment does not come from learning more rules, but from learning to listen, listening to your body, listening to your soul, listening to the guided rhythm of life. In this freedom, you will no longer be drawn into arguments to prove that you are right. You will choose battles that are worth fighting and release those that only drain you. This does not make you weak, it makes you focused. Your strength is no longer scattered, and when the moment comes, you can stand with a calm that causes others to listen, not because you speak loudly, but because you speak from your center. Your life will become a living testimony without display. Some will ask why you seem more at peace. Some will notice that you no longer react as before. Some will come to you not for advice, but simply to be near. Do not turn this into a role, let it be fruit. When you try to hold a role, you grow tired. When you let fruit fall naturally, you remain light. I do not call you to become a symbol. I call you to become a source of life, a small source, but enduring. You will learn how to walk alone without being lonely. Not every step will be shared with others, yet you no longer panic when the road grows quiet. You know that some stretches require silence so you can hear more clearly, and some require separation so you can mature. This aloneness is not abandonment, it is space to strengthen what has already been sealed. And when you return to the community, you carry deeper presence, not neediness. Freedom without turning back also teaches you how to end the day. You no longer carry everything into bed with you. You learn to lay burdens down without guilt. You learn to give thanks for what was done, forgive what was incomplete, and allow tomorrow to arrive on its own. This rest is not laziness, it is faith practiced. When you sleep in peace, you are declaring that you trust the one who leads you more than your own need for control. In the days ahead, you will see doors open in very natural ways. Not every door requires you to walk through it. You will choose, and your choosing will no longer be driven by fear of missing out, but by alignment. Some good things will pass by, you will smile and bless them. Some right things will remain, you will step into them with reverence. This selectivity does not make your life smaller, it gives your life depth. My child, if at times you stumble, remember this stumbling no longer pulls you backward. You rise more quickly because you no longer condemn yourself. You adjust sooner because you no longer hide. You continue walking because you know where you are. This freedom is not never making mistakes. It is no longer being imprisoned by them. And that is the great gift of the journey you have walked. Now, as the whole journey comes to a close, I do not give you a list of tasks. I give you a way of living. Live from the center. Live by the rhythm. Live in truth. Live with gratitude. When you live this way, everything else will find its place. You do not need to chase meaning. Meaning will follow you like a shadow follows its form. My beloved, step into the new cycle with steps that are light yet steady. Do not turn back, not because the past was bad, but because the present is bright enough to guide you. As you walk, you will discover that freedom without turning back is not leaving what has been, but fully inhabiting what is. And within that present moment, you will live, love, work, and rest, all with a gentle authority, a lasting peace, and a light that does not seek attention. Everything has been completed in its proper order. Now, live. Thank you for listening to today's message. Please subscribe and turn on notifications so we can continue receiving the living word together. Build a firm faith and walk in the boundless love of God. Amen.